Shivaya, Shivaya Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namaha.
नमः ऐं ह्रीं श्री गोदावर्यै नमः ऐं ह्रीं श्री भद्राय नमः ऐं ह्रीं कावेर्यै नमः नक्षत्रजातायां
हरिदत्तगोत्रोद्भवस्य
साधिपतये ऐरावतवाहनाय साङ्गाय सायुधाय शक्तिनेज परिवाराय सर्वालङ्कारभूषिताय उमामहेश्वरपार्षदाय क्षेत्रपालं महादेवं गणानागं गणपतिं हवामहे कविं कवीनाम् उपमश्रवस्तमम्
நம சிவாய
கைவனடி போற்றி ஆயிராய இன்பம் அருளும் மறை
पारिषद्यास्परिष्यते एक्ये शक्तियुक्ताय श्री शिवाय परमात्मने नमः नमस्कारां समर्पयामि कर्पूरनीराजनम्
Shrimatre Namaha. Namaskaram everyone, and welcome back to our Sacred Rites and Rituals of Sanātana Dharma Learning Series, which is a joint presentation by the Sri Vidya Temple Society of Rochester, New York, USA, and Ashtanga Yoga Mandir of Sri Lanka. These lectures are conducted by Sri Chaitanyanandanada, affectionately known as Ayya. Ayya is the founder and Peethadipati of the Sri Vidya Temple. Both Ayya and Amma, Srimati Nyanamba, have dedicated their lives to the noble mission of preserving and spreading the knowledge of Devi worship and the rich traditions of Shaiva Bhakti. Mahashivaratri, one of the most sacred nights of the year, will be celebrated this year on Monday, February 28th, beginning at 8 p.m. with the Sahasralingarchana Puja, in which 1,116 Spatika Lingas are arranged in a special Sahasralinga formation. Following Kalasha Puja, Rudra Homam, Abhishekam, Alankaram, and bhajans, 11 different Shivalingams will be established and worshipped throughout the night. For those interested in the Sahasralingarchana Puja Paddhati, it is now available on the Sri Vidya Temple ebook store. For more information on Shivaratri and all of our upcoming festivals and events, please visit our website or download our app. A few housekeeping reminders before we begin today's session. Please use the question form to share any questions you might have pertaining to the content discussed. For those viewing our live stream, our question form can also be found on our webpage, which is srividya.org/aym-lectures. At this time, we will hand it over to Ayya to begin today's session.
Hamsa Sivasoham Hamsaha Hasaka Frame Hasakshamalavarayum Hasaum Sahakshamalavarayim Sahau Swarupana Hetave Swagurave Sri Annapurneshwari Amba Sameda Sri Sri Amrutanandanada Saraswati Mahapattaraka Mama Sri Guru Sri Padukam Pujayami Tarpajami Namaha. My humble pranams to my esteemed Guruji, Sri Sri Amrutanandanada Saraswati of Devipuram, India. I prostrate before him and implore that he sit on my open heart lotus and speak through me. Namaskaram. We started on the Chaturvimsati forms of Shiva last time, and we studied about the Linga Utsava Murthy, Lingotpava Murthy, which is the first one in all of this. Now, before I proceed, I want to let you know the 25 forms of Shiva that are popularly accepted are the ones that have remained through Ishvara Sankalpam. Many thousands of forms of Shiva have manifested, and immediately after the purpose for which the manifestation took place, it has disappeared. They are not counted. For instance, for Vallala Maharaja, for your information, this is the king who was responsible for the construction of the Annamalayar temple, the temple in Tiruvannamalai, the spiritual magnet that has attracted thousands upon thousands yogis and rishis and other upasakas. For him, for Vallala Maharaja's sake, Swami took the form of a paradesi, a beggar. Then in Madurai, in the Meenakshi Sundareshwara temple, around which on the streets. He took the form of a person selling firewood and walked the streets of Madurai. It's for this reason that if you speak about Madurai, you get liberation. Because he walked on the streets of Madurai for the sake of a devotee. Those forms did not last. You won't see them in any temples. So the 25 forms, how did they come about? Vyasa Bhagavan, the one who was responsible for giving us the 18 Puranas, in the Skanda Puranam, in a section called Shankara Sangidai, and in that, in Upadesa Kandam, Murthy Manyam, a section called Murthy Manyam, Vyasa Bhagavan has given details of these 25 forms. Now, 25 forms are, these 25 forms you will find in the Meenakshi Sundareswara Temple in some places. But in other incidents, there are other textual sources. One of them is called Shiva Parakramam. This text, there are 64 forms categorized under the main Moola divine forms. In the Thiruvanekkaval, Rajarajeswari Temple, all the 64 Murthis with all their facets are established as Sadhishtashti Kaleshwara Murthis. In the Kachaleshwara Temple in Chennai, around 50 pictures of the Mahesha Murthy forms can be seen. In the 25 Murthis, like I told you, can be seen in the Chandrasekhara Temple in Madurai, near its Dvajastambam. You can also find these forms in Allahabad, Triveni, Adi Shankara Temple on its Vimana Mandapam. You can bet that this is a very recent, in the last 50, 60 years, this has been built. Now, it is accepted that the Shiva Lingam, in fact, there are slokas in the Sri Rudram, in the Krishna Yajurvedam, the fifth Patalam, about the shape of the Shiva Lingam. And it is very clearly stated there that it is oval, that is in the shape of an oval. The Yoni Pitam is the feminine part of it. So the oval shape is Shiva and the Yoni Pitam is Shakti. Both of them together, not separately, both of them together is the crystallization of the Pranavam, the sound that preceded creation. I used to always quote this. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the God was Word, God was the Word. That word is Omkaram. A-U-Ma. Now, let's spend a little time trying to find out how this oval shape came to be possible. Creation started with a spanda, a movement, icha, desire. A point is defined as something that has no dimensions, no reference point. In the primordial space, when there was nothing, this was pre-creation, this point, again, which has no dimensions, wanted to see itself. So it separated from itself and traveled and was observing the point from which it came. So there, the first triputi was formed. The observer, the observed, and the act of observing. Now, if you look at the Nataraja form, you will find that there is a dancer in the middle of a circle of fire, indicating movement and therefore life. The circle of fire, scientists will say that it was the so-called Big Bang. Now imagine for yourself, there is a tremendous explosion. So in the beginning, the first movement from the non-manifested form to the manifested form came with sound, with Omkara. Before the manifested form, before the Omkara, what would have been there in the primordial space? That primordial space had no movement, no light, no sound, nothing. It was silent. That silence is what one of the forms describes as Dakshinamurti. The medium of instruction is silence. So from that silent form, manifestation occurred with the beginning of the sound, and trillions of rays of light would have escaped the point of explosion. Now let us follow just one ray of light. When you do sankalpam, you say, Akhilanda Koti anda Jivatmana Subhakalyanartam. Koti anda, that means there are many, many more millions of universes. Now we are following the path of just one. The point from which the origination of this ray of light was not static. It is moving in space. And if it moves in, if it was static, the ray of light would have expressed itself in its locus as a perfect circle. And it would have come back to the point of origin. But this point is moving. And the ray of light, when it traveled and it would come back to the place, you will find that it would form an ellipse. That is your Shiva Lingam. That is one, Andam. Now think about how many rays of light would have escaped. Each of them describing one form. Now, Somewhere in 1895, a gentleman by the name of Ratnavelu Mudaliyar published a book called Shiva Parakramam, quoting from the Vedas and quoting from Veda, Agama, and books that have been books that have remained secret up to that point, quoting from each of them. He discovered, he has made the forms of Shiva to be 64. Now, each of these is valid. But for the present, we are looking at 25. So which is correct? Whether 25 is correct or whether 64 is correct. Depending on the stories behind each Murthy. Just like the Andi Kolam, the beggar form that he took for the sake of one devotee, Vallala Maharaj, that form never stayed or was not retained. Just like the form that sold firewood for the sake of a devotee who sang devotional songs in the Meenakshi Sundareshwara Temple. A gentleman by the name of Dharma. That form also did not stay. So I suspect that some of the forms may have remained for some time and then because of disuse were quietly dropped. In any case, we'll look at all of them because it is important. Now, Shiva, in any Shiva temple, the Moola Murthy is always a Shiva Lingam. If the Moola Murthy is always a Shiva Lingam, then how do we know about all these other forms that have been described both by Vyasa and in this other Shiva Parakrama? If the Moola Murthy, that is the Murthy that is in the sanctum, is a Shiva Lingam, it follows naturally that the other Murtis will be either Parivara Murtis or Utsava Murtis. Think about it. There may be one or two exceptions. We looked at the Koshta Murtams in the last class. If you remember, the structure around the Moola Murthy in the sanctum, there are Koshtams. The southern Koshtam is one of the 25 Murtis called Dakshina Murthy. And the western Varuna Koshtam is Lingodpava Murthy, which we saw last time. And then in the Indra Koshtam, Brahma and Durga. This is standard. There are other temples where you will see one or more of these different varieties of Murtis in the Parivaram. What do I mean by saying Parivaram? The Shiva Lingam and the Shivalayam in the middle is the main temple, main shrine. And then there will be a courtyard. Along the courtyard, you will find sometimes these forms have been installed. A good example will be the Kalyana Sundara Murthy that you would find in Madurai. When he married, for the sake of the Devas and for the rest of the world, incidentally, that is one of the 25 Murtis identified. Or Somaskanda Murti. For example, I will come to this later on, which is found in the temple built by Ravana in the northeastern Ishanya Konam, northeastern corner of Sri Lanka, several thousands of years old. You know, if Ravana built it, you know how old this could be. And later on, renovated by a Chola prince by the name of Kulakotan. There you will find the main Utsava Murti is Somaskanda Murti, with Shiva in Sukhasanam, Devi in Sukhasanam, and Subramanya in the middle. Now, each of these, sometimes they have very interesting stories behind them. And we'll look at some of those stories also. Now, in the Mahanyasam, there is something that, goes like this: Jwalaya Namaha, Jwalalinga Namaha, Shiva Namaha, Shivalinga Namaha. Jwala means fire. So it is from this form that all the others have manifested. These forms are 64, I told you, like that is mentioned in the Shiva Parakramam. Basic 8 forms. 8 times 8 became 64. Lingamurtis, common forms. Sadasiva Murtis, Uma Maheshwara Murtis, Nadeshwara Murtis, Dakshina Murtis, Veera Murtis, Astra Murtis, right? Asura Murti destroying Asuras, Bhairava Murti, Vaidya Murti, the one deity who existed before the creator, Brahma, and the sustainer Vishnu, and other Leela Murtis. Leela means the advent among devotees, for whom, like we saw before, he has taken countless number of forms. And they were not sustained, and they did not remain. In the Lingamurti, Lingotpavar and Mukhalingamurti, these 2 forms are there. Then in the Sadasiva Murtis, Mahasadasiva Murti, Lakulishwara Murti, Ekapada Murti, and Kalyana Sundarar, Ardhanarishwarar, Gauri Varadava Murti, Gauri Lasa Manvida Murti, Prarthana Murti. Then in the Nadeshwara Murtis, Sandhya Nrittar, that is the dance that he performed during twilight time, Sandhya Kalam. And Sadanrittar, the dance form associated with him when he is always, Sadanritta Murti is dancing all the time. Then with Dakshina Murti, Yoga Dakshina Murti, Veena Dakshinamurti and Guru Dakshinamurti are the three forms that are there. Then the Veera form. Veeram is bravery. Sarabamurti, Veerabhadramurti, and Daksha Yajna Samhara Murti, Kangala Murti, Matsya Samhara Murti, Kurma Samhara Murti, Varaha Samhara Murti, and Kama Dahana Murti. These forms are there. Then there's another division called Astra Murtis. Agora Astra Murti, Kirada Murti, Pasavada Murti. Then Murti destroying Asuras, Tripurandaga Murti, Gajasura Samhara Murti, Sardulakara Murti, Jalandhara Bala Murti. These forms are there. Then Bhairava Murtis. Avat Uddharana Murti, Bhataka Murti, Chetrapalaka Murti, Brahma Siracheda Murti, and Rakta Bishap Pradhana Murti. Vaidya Murtis associated with medical healing properties. Jwarab Agja Murti, Mrityunjaya Murti, Neelakanta Murti. Ayan Malik, Ayan before the time of the creator Brahma and Vishnu, before their existence. Shankaranarayana Murti, Egapada Trimurti, Tripada Trimurti, Chakraparada Murti. Then there are other forms. Rishabandikar, Pujaskalila Lila Murti, Bujaskadirasa Murti, Bhikshadana Murti, Sandeshu Anagraha Murti, Ashwaruda Murti, Gajandiha Murti, Karudandiha Murti. These forms have been mentioned in detail in this book called Shiva Parakramam. It has been published in Chennai in the year 1895. Now today, after we saw the Lingotbhava Murti, so some of them, some speciality must have been there, right? We saw the story of the pillar of light appearing in front of Brahma and Vishnu, who were arguing as to who was greater. Brahma said, I am the creator, so I am greater than you. And Vishnu said, you can create and leave them. I am the one who has to sustain them, so I am greater. And in between them, this pillar of light, remember, Jwala Janamaha, Jwala Linga Janamaha. That style rose into the skies and penetrated the earth and went down all the Patala Lokas, all of them, and all the other Lokas. So they competed. And this story is the one that happened in Tiruvannamalai. And the story goes that Brahma could not find the end and Vishnu could not find the end. Vishnu took the form of a boar and went down. Brahma took the form of a swan and flew up. And it is said that Brahma met a flower, screw pine flower. In Tamil it is called Talampu, highly perfumed. And he asked, how far away am I from the top? And Brahma told him, the Talampu told him, the flower told him, I have been falling for many eons and I have still not reached the earth. So both of them entered into a pact and came down, and Vishnu came back and said, I could not find the end. Brahma said, I found it. Here is the flower as proof. I took it from Shiva's head. And because he did that, he was cursed to have no temples on this earth. Now, the speciality in Tiruvannamalai is that if you go around Annamalaya and on the Varuna Koshtam, when you see the Lingodpava Murthy, because that is the place where it originated, if you worship that Lingodpava Murthy, all the karmas that you have done over hundreds of thousands of millions of births will be instantaneously eliminated. That's what the Puranam of the temple tells you. So, see, the story is sustained there. And because that form can give the benefits of destruction of sin, that is there in the temple, and all the other Shivalayas, Shiva temples that have the Lingodpava Murthy are only as reminders of the original story. So, in Tiruvannamalai, this is there. The second form that we are interested in, he is called Sukhasana Murthy. Sukhasana Murthy. That means he is in Sukhasanam. One foot is down, the other foot is up. And in this form that mentions his formation as Sukhasana Murthy, he has 6 hands. There is Abhayahastam, right hand, Abhayahastam. Then he has a Gadayudam. And in the back hand, he has a Damaru. On the left side, he is mentioned as having Varadahastam, but he has a bell. Remember, when you do puja, when you are doing the puja, you take the bell and hold it in front of your Anahata Chakra. And you say, why? What do you say? When you ring the bell, all the negative energies in that area will dissipate. And positive energies, that is, the negative energies can be equated to the asuras or the negative forces. And the positive energies can be equated to the devas. Devada Gnana Karanam. They come. So he has a bell on the left hand, in front. And the other hand has a stick, a dandam. And the behind hand has a deer that is about to jump. Now, in the original 25 Murthy description from Vyasa Bhagavan, it says he doesn't have a Devi. But in the subsequent narrative behind the thing, we find that after giving darshan to the Rishis, to the Shivaganas, to all the celestial musicians, all of them, and the Devi, he was about to retire. And the Devi asked him whether he could explain some of the intricacies of the Vedas and the Agamas. So he is supposed to have sat on an elevated platform with this asanam, Sukhasanam. And the Devi, who was now in the form of a student, listening. So traditionally, she would sit a few feet below him. And they talked about this. Now, if you look for such a form, like I told you, mostly these forms are in the prakarams. That is, they become a parivara murti in most of the 25 forms of Shiva that have been accepted and have been put forth by Vyasa Bhagavan. You will see this deer on his left hand. What does the deer signify? The deer signifies a human mind that is trying to focus on the divine. And just like a deer, it will not stay in one place. It will jump from one place to another and then attach itself to thoughts that arise out of that position and keep going. So by holding it in his hand, he is able to control it. Now, if you look at this form, in the town of Sirkali, remember, this is the town where, this is the place where Thiruñāna Sambandhamurti Nayanar was born. And the deity is called Thoniyappar. What is peculiar about the form there? He does not have any weapons. So, in that prakaram, you will find Sukhasana Murti. Sukhasana Murti, in this temple, I don't know whether there is a separate temple or it is the Thoniyappar temple, but it says it is in Sirkali and it's a few kilometers from Chidambaram. And it is mentioned that if you worship the Sukhasana Murti there, all your desires will be fulfilled. Remember, this Shiva that you're talking about is the primordial, formless, attributeless Murti. So it's the primordial power. Because of compassion, it has taken this form as Sukhasanam with Sukhasanam, and it has given you. Now, if you worship the Sukhasana Murti, all your desires will be fulfilled. Remember, they don't say that your spiritual desires will be fulfilled. If a person, the average human being, 95% of them, if a deity appears before them and asks them, what do you want? They will first ask about all the material glitters that is around them. Material, the glitzy stuff that is around them, that they should have a nice life, they should have a good house, their children should be highly educated, all of those things. Nobody will ask, very few of them probably, will ask, I want to reach you. Can you take away all the appendages, all the baggage that I have collected over thousands and thousands and thousands of births and still collecting? Can you eliminate? Remember, he will give you what you ask him. So it's entirely up to the human being who goes there and worships. And he is supposed to have appeared in this form in this temple. And that's one of the 25 forms that we have been looking at. Now, I'll stop here today. We will ask the questions.
So, this question is about the Shivaratri festival that's coming up. During Shivaratri, can Annalinga Puja be done?
Annalinga Puja.
And what else can be done on that day at home?
You can do any Shiva Puja that you want. Annadi Lingam, that means the Shiva Lingam now falls under the category Annalingam is a Kshaniga Lingam. That means for the duration of the puja, you can make the, now you see this. This is the Annalingam. Can be made out of rice. And it has to be treated as a regular Shivalingam. And you can do whatever archanas you want, whatever worship you want. Any worship that is prescribed for Shiva, you can do on Shivaratri. For example, if you make a sankalpam that you will chant Shiva Puranam 108 times during the 4 jamams, you can do that. He is flexible. So, of course, to answer your question, Annalingam can be worshipped. And one little change in the slide that you see in front of you, they have to put ice and a small, usually it is done with raisins. You can embed raisins, 3 raisins in the form of the ice on the anna. And Abhishekam can be done with ghee, ajam. Next question.
What is Shaiva or Sivadhiksha?
Sivadhiksha is quite popular in Sri Lanka and among the Tamils living in Sri Lanka, because they say that they are people who live in the island where Ravana, who was a foremost Shiva Bhakta, lived. And there are temples built by Ravana and Ravana's family scattered all over the island. There are actually 1008 Shivalingams that he is supposed to have installed from Tirukonamalai, that is Tirukoneshwaram in the northeast, which I talked about, where the Somaskanda Murtam is, all the way to Kadarkamam in the southern coast. In the dry zone jungles, he is supposed to have established 1008 Shivalingams. Now, Sivadhiksha, you must approach a competent authority. In Sri Lanka, at least when I was growing up, the only such persons would be temple priests. Muppodum Tirumeni Tinduvar. 3 times a day, at least, the one who touches a Shivalingam. Tirumeni, Shivalinga Tirumeni. Why would anybody else go and touch a Shivalingam? If you are going to touch a Shivalingam 3 times a day, that means it is understood that the person is doing Shivalinga Puja, Trikala Puja. They approach somebody like that and they will give you the Sri Siva Panchaksharam. Om Namah Shivaya. And you are supposed to have received this, and they will teach you how to do Anushtanam. That means waking up, Achamana Vidhi, Snana Vidhi, how to do ajavanam, how to bathe, and how to apply vibhuti in 16 places on your body. Mulu neru pusiya munivar. Remember. So you're supposed to wear the vibhuti. And then you sit down to do japam. It could be 108, it could be 1008. But you have to perform Purashcharanam of Sri Shiva Panchaksharam. Then, now this is your main mantra, remember. The person who is giving you the mantras must give you Ganapati, Guru Paduka, and this. Once you have performed Purashcharanam, that is 500,000 iterations of the mantra, Visesha Deeksha is given. That is, if the person who gave the mantra to you is also Upasaka, when the person looks at your eyes, he will know the position of the ojas in you. That ojas is the one that increases all kinds of things in you, your memory power, your ability to hear something once and retain it, your ability to hear something once and repeat it. After this Purashcharanam, he will give you Visesha Deeksha. That is, this first one, Om Namah Shivaya, is called Stula Panchaksharam. The Visesha Deeksha that he will give you will be Shivaya Namah. Shivaya Namaha. That is called Sukshma Panchaksharam. Stula Panchaksharam, Sukshma Panchaksharam. If you stay with Sukshma Panchaksharam and complete Purashcharanam, the blessing is that you will be completely relieved from the cycle of births and deaths. So this is the Sivadhiksha. Next question.
In a Shivalaya, which has a Shivalingam as the Mula Vigraha, is the Utsava Murthy Uma Maheshwara, are they in their separate human forms or are they in a single form? If you have Uma Maheshwara as the Utsava Murthy.
Why in a Shivalaya with Shivalingam as the Mula Vigraha is the Utsava Murthy Uma Maheshwara in their separate human forms? They are not separate human forms. If you notice, they will be in one base. They will be seated on one base. That Pitam. The Devi is Shiva's grace. Shiva's grace is the one that has taken the form of the mother. They are both one unit. You can't separate them. And it can be Uma Maheshwara form, or it can be Somaskanda form, or it can be Ardhanarishwara form, any one of them. Depends on what the history and what the ancestry of that temple is, of that particular temple is. Next one.
So a related question, Ayya. Can the Utsava Murthy ever be a Shivalingam itself?
No. Utsava Murthy, I don't know whether there may be exceptions to the rule. In Tamil Nadu alone, there are 58,000 temples. So some of them, which I had been going to India for years together. From 1967, 68, I've been coming to India. And invariably, we'd end up in Chennai. I had no idea that the Panchabhuta temples were in and around Chennai also. Mannadi Maheshwarar, Malligeshwarar, So many places are there. So I don't know, but I have not heard or read or come across any of the temples that I have visited, both in Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and some places in Karnataka and Kerala. I have not come across an Utsava Murthy for a Shiva temple being a Shiva Lingam.
Yeah, can you explain what is meant by Ashtamurti in the Lalita Sahasranamam? Ashtamurti in the Lalita Sahasranamam. Does this have anything to do with Shiva?
If something has got to do with Lalita, it has got to do with Shiva also. Don't you know? There are two parts, two sides of the same coin. You can't separate them. So Ashtamurti Atmikaya Namaha. Even I think the Maha Sadishashti Koti Yogini Ganasevita, I think that is also connected to the 64 forms of Shiva. They are both the same. The stories have been written by people in different languages separately. That's all.
Yeah, what about Shiva's form as Kameshwara? Is that, it was not one that we talked about today.
The form as Kameshwara, at least in the 25 forms of Shiva that I have been studying, he is not there. And in the 64 forms, the closest that I have come to is Kalyana Sundara, which is also form of the part of the 25 Murti Vedam, that is variations, and in the 64 forms also it is there. But Kameshwara, Anganilaya, that is very peculiar to the Lalita Upakyanam, which tells you the story of Lalita's Utpatti, Sthanam, Lakshanam, all of those things, right? I haven't come across Kameshwara as a separate Murti for Shiva. Kalyana Sundara, yes, is the same form. It says, Koti Manmata Prakasham, Koti Surya Prakasham, the brilliance of a million suns and million Manmatas, Cupids. So, no, I haven't seen Kameshwara as a separate entity. Because the moment you introduce Kameshwara, he is part of the Lalita Upakyanam and Lalita is on his lap. Okay?
Yeah, the deer that you described, that Shiva is holding the deer in his hand.
Yes.
Is another interpretation of the deer the breath, as opposed to the mind?
There are many of them. One details the story of the Rishis of Taruka Vanam. The Rishis of Taruka Vanam were a specialized lot. You can say they were CEOs of multinational companies, each of them. And they had all the power under them. And their wives were supposed to be the most chaste women that you could find on the earth. And this led to arrogance. They started to think that there was nobody to compare. And Shiva and Mahavishnu, they decided to teach these fellows a lesson. And the Rishis were seated in their Yajnashala doing the Yajnam, and the wives were in the Parnasalas. Shiva took the form of one of the 25 forms that we are going to study, Bhikshadanar. He carried a Trisulam horizontally like this. And he was nude and unbelievably handsome. Mahavishnu took the form of Mohini. And Shiva went where the wives were, in the Parnasala district, and Mohini went where the Rishis were. And these fellows couldn't resist her naturally. So they ran behind her. Forgetting their yajnam, their japam, their tarpanam, everything, they ran. And the Rishi Patnis saw Bhikshadana, and they ran behind him. Not even knowing that the clothes were falling apart and all that. They started to run. See, the Trisulam is holding horizontally on his thing. And he started to go. And he brought both of them brought both parties together, so that each group saw the weaknesses of the other. And the Rishis were pissed. They were very angry. Now you see, in this slide, the Rishi Patnis are running behind him and their clothes are falling apart. They have no idea what is going on. So what happened? The Rishis thought they had to destroy Shiva. And they started to perform Abhichara Homam. And one of the first things they sent was the deer. He's supposed to have come. And Shiva, he's the all-knowing, he's the primordial being. He just took the deer and held it in his hand. Other things were sent, like an elephant, a tiger, cobras, all those things. He just subdued every one of them. So that is one story. The other story is the control of the breath. If a human being gets angry, or a human being gets enamored with something, the breathing pattern changes. If you hold on to the Lord's feet, He will make sure that that does not happen. So that's it.
Maybe the last question today. Can these different forms of Shiva be considered avatars of Shiva, similar to Vishnu's avatars?
How many avatars are you going to consider? Vishnu has 10 recognized avatars. And he also has, similar to Shiva, Kshanika avatarams. For individuals, he has taken forms, and those have not stayed. Shiva has taken literally tens of thousands of forms, just so he could help a devotee. Right? So, it is possible. Okay?
That's all for today. Yeah.
We'll see you here next week. Thank you very much. We'll see you here next week.
Thank you, Ayya, for sharing your knowledge about the many forms of Shiva. The knowledge you've shared is a true gift, and we're excited to learn more in the upcoming sessions. Just a note to everybody, we will not have our yoga session today. And to access all content from our prior sessions, please visit srividya.org/AYM-lectures. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. We will all see you next week.